Hello, everybody. I hope you're having an amazing day so far. Happy Tuesday. I'm back again with another live stream. So, you guys join the chat. Do me a favor, hit the like button, and let me know where you're tuning in from because this is a very interesting conversation that we're about to have. And I really hope that every single one of you joining the chat have an open mind to have this discussion without any issue, any without insulting each other or being disrespectful towards one another. All right. So the reason I initiated this conversation is because I'm trying to, shed some light on some issues based upon my personal research and a variety of questionings that I have conducted with certain African American groups that I I know who are more aware of the situation, and I also had a very um, you know um, you know more constructive conversations with other Africans, and I collected some data that I feel that we should all be aware of and have a discussion about. All right, guys. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, please stay tuned and give me a chance to hear what I have to say about this. Okay. All right. So I am going to speak about colonialism in Africa, but I am going to focus more on the Democratic Republic of Congo because that's where I'm originally from. And I would almost generalize slavery because I wasn't, none of us were alive when all of this were happening. But I'm gonna touch base on some similarities, between the two. And then we get to discuss and see whether one group was more treated harshly or more than the other group, and vice versa. Okay, it seems to me that when African Americans speak on slavery, they make it seem like they have endured the most than Africans have ever did during colonialism. But it is fair to say that both groups, they have endured the most harsh treatments under the both saviors. So this is my opinion, okay? When colonialism were happening, slavery were taking place as well. There were the same forces that have initiated this unacceptable human treatments, okay? But the only difference between African Americans during slavery and Africans during colonialism is that during colonialism, Africans were still in their home in Africa, okay? But African Americans, however, were the group of Africans who were taken from Africa and they were enslaved in a different land. But the ideology was the same. Why did I say that? During slavery, of course, slave masters, they had plantations, they had industries, and they benefited 100% off of that because of slavery, because of free labor. All the slaves, they were putting in like unimaginable amount of hours throughout the day. They were producing a lot more, but they weren't compensated for it. You give them meal to keep them strong, to get through their day, but they weren't, you know, remunerated from that. But it goes the same as African during colonialism. In case some of you didn't know, during colonialism, Africans went through hell just as much as African Americans went through hell during slavery. Because during colonialism, colonial powers, they pretty much exploited human beings. They weren't compensating them for the work that they were putting in. Remind you, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I would be focusing more on Congo rather than other African countries because that's where I'm from. I know a little bit of the history of what happened in Congo. For instance, under the King Leopold II from Belgium, all right, what did they do? During the industrialization of rubber, tire industries, and all of this other stuff that you need rubber for, what did they do? They made Congolese produce as much as they possibly could because there is a huge reserve of rubber in Congo. Do you know what happened to Congolese who didn't meet their production requirement throughout the day? They had their hands cut off. Okay? They were beaten so bad. It's just a lot of similarities, but sometimes I get sick and tired of hearing when people talk about these issues, especially African Americans. They made it seem like the Africans, they had it good, all right? That African Americans had it worse. Well, but that's not true at all. Africans also had it just as bad as African Americans did. Because keep in mind, Africans were segregated too. I remember a period when my parents were telling me that it was a certain time of the day where Congolese were allowed to walk around downtown area, okay? So if it was after 5 p.m., I believe, there were no Africans or no blacks allowed in downtown. All of the bars, club, all of the establishments were only accessible to the colonialists that occupied Congo during those era, right? Wasn't that the same thing that happened here in America during, segregation, where you weren't even allowed to get on the same bus as white people? I do understand African Americans during slavery, they were beaten. So did Africans. African Americans were fed to crocodiles, all of these horror stories, told, that happened during slavery. Those did happen to Africans too. When the civil rights movement started, right? And that was when Africans also stood up against this evil people that were enslaving us. But we have to understand they just called it colonialism because they came and conquered the lands in different parts of the world. But they didn't call it colonialism here in America because they consider this were their land, and everybody that they have brought from other countries, they were their slaves. But the practice was pretty much the same. The level of treatments was the same. The level of cruelty was the same. They looked at black people or slave as non-human being, unable to make decisions for themselves, intellectually inferior to them, that they didn't worth anything by to just serve their masters. That's what the ideology was, okay? In Africa, the same thing was taking place, except in Africa, it was more so we were pretty much held as hostages in our own land. versus African Americans that were taken from Africa, brought here to America or any part of the world where slavery was taking place, and they were enslaved there. And during slavery, it wasn't only black people, okay? They also had slaves from different European countries, okay? But this was more so to gain the level of, you know, I don't know, opulence, to make a difference between them, to get ahead of us, which they have successfully done by now. With technologies and everything, people are catching up. But I wanted to talk about these issues to address this directly to my beloved African American communities, especially those that believe that African Americans have gone through hell than Africans ever did during colonialism. That's not true. And it is not fair to say. We all went through the same thing. It is not the time to talk about who had it better, who had it worse. However, we could all both come together and agree that we all went through hell. But what can we do in regards to the issue instead of continuing to divide ourselves further by telling stories to make one seem better than the other, or make one seem like they didn't go through a harsh treatment more than the other? Because during slavery, Africans who were under colonialism, they didn't come here to see what was happening here. And it goes the same to African Americans who were stripped from their family. Okay, those are like those little things that a lot of historians will tell people, or all of these YouTube influencers, when they talk about these issues, they just want to get the views because they have an audience that only have their ears open to what they have to say, rather than scrutinizing factual evidence and to make a claim to actually support, you know what I'm saying? And to make a point that actually supports your claim. I'm not here to say that African, because I'm from Africa and I'm Africans, and say that, oh, during colonialism, we had it worse than African Americans as ever did during slavery. Both practices are horrible. Both practices cause death, cause like enormous mental health issues within the black communities, okay? Well, it's nothing that we take pleasure when we talk about it. But I have a problem and I have an issue with those that are weaponizing the matter even after years of colonialism or centuries of slavery or whatever, right? Even though, I mean, I believe that colonialism and slavery is still there. They never got rid of it, except that they practicing it in a different form with, you know, with international organizations that advocate against, you know, humanitarian treatments and all of these NGOs that exist around the world now that oversees all of this matter, and trying to make it so that the world is a better place. But technically, slavery and colonialism is still there. Why are African countries now are revolting against their colonial powers and kicking them out? The perfect example is Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. I don't even have to get into the details to tell you all about that, but you guys already know what is taking place there. It's because the ideology is to make sure to maintain the African continent poor in order for them to continue to succeed in areas that we fail. Okay? And that is the goal. And making sure they make 100% profit of all of our resources. And when we need help, we don't have no other choice but going back to them, begging for help, begging for money, because they're using our own money against us. That's exactly what they did during slavery, didn't they? They have a whole family working in a plantation. If you complain about something, you get whipped. All right, so it's more of like shut up and do as you're told. Okay, if they complain about it, they beat the shit out of them and they deprive them of food for a long period of time. When you're starving, you don't have anybody else but the person who's actually mistreating you. I mean, you're going to go back to them because you want to live, right? You want to survive. You go back to them and they provide you with food. That's also exactly what happened in Africa during colonialism, guys. People were whipped. They weren't allowed to question anything. You do as you were told. You don't produce enough rubber, you and your family, you're getting your hands cut off. There are pictures out there. But now, with where the world has come a long way, now they want Africans to apologize. I mean, want Africans to accept an apology, and that's enough for them. So you've done all of these things, you've caused all of this chaos, problems within the black communities. All you asking for is forgiveness? No. You want us to forgive you. But what are you going to do to fix the damages that you've already done? Isn't that why African Americans now are fighting to get reparation? Even though it seems highly unlikely to happen, it might happen, nothing is impossible. But we all want it to happen, right? But so is also Africans. African countries are advocating for asking all the colonial powers to pay reparations too, or asking colonial powers to leave the African continent so that we can develop, because while they're still there, they have the grip on the continent of Africa, we were never developed. And you got authors from many different Western countries who actually have written book stating that they should never let Africa develop because of the danger it will potentially present to them. Okay? Because everybody who's ever developing, who has ambition to develop their country for the sake of their people, they're seen as a threat because it is a system of white supremacy. They do not want no other race to come out on the top but themselves. That's why we're seeing all of this anti-China sentiment happening in all of the Western countries combined. Okay? Because they do not want to see Chinese being powerful. I mean, even now they're unstoppable. That's why United States is dropping sanctions on them, on their tech companies, on their social media platform like TikToks, because they're trying to slow their growth. These didn't start today. It didn't start 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's an white supremacy ideology that have started since they started conquering the world, and they want to maintain the same attitude. How dare you say Africans didn't go through hell during colonialism as much as African Americans did during slavery? That is unfair to say. That breaks a lot of Africans' heart, acknowledging what had happened to their great-great-grandparents who were picked to go work in these plantations to produce rubbers. More specifically in Congo, people had their hand, they didn't produce enough, or they complained about something, and the punishment of choice It was by depriving them the ability to ever use their hands again. Okay, more harsh things happen to African Americans too, but I don't think we should be comparing who had it better, who had it worse. We should be looking at the issue, address it, and talk about, okay, this is what they've done to us. What are the strategies that we can all do and come together and get out of this slavery or colonialism, because technically it's still there in practice. Let me grab this comment real quick. Any apologies, just give us back all things. Too much has been done. Absolutely. Let me see. Oh, I 100% agree with you. They should give us everything that belongs to us. Do you know how much resources stolen from the continent of Africa that you will find in museums in European countries? Hell, our independence father, Patrice Emery Lumumba from the Democratic Republic of Congo, his remains stayed in Belgium more than 60 plus years after his death. They just returned it back to returning to Congo not too long ago. What was the point of keeping a human being's remains? For what? Fetish purposes? I mean, I don't understand. These people are evil. I don't care what you think of them. When I say these people are evil, I am not talking about ordinary citizens of these countries, but I am talking about their governments, their political leaders. All of these global elites, they have one mission, which is to enslave the world. They have done it during the time when laws didn't exist the way they do today, where segregation was legal, where owning human being as your private properties were not questioned. As the world evolved, all of these things were abolished, but then they just changed the form of doing it. Pretty much, if you have a job, you work a 9-to-5 job where you are getting paid just enough to pay your bills, buy groceries, and basically get by every single day. It is a form of slavery that a lot of people don't understand. They don't want you to make more money, otherwise you will be rich and you will get out of there. When they're making billions upon billions of dollars, and even if they give you a raise probably 5 or 10 times of what you're making currently, it's still not going to affect their profits. But they're not going to do it. You know why? Because the government has allowed them to do so. So these governments' ideologies have changed over the years, but the mindset, the ideology is still the same. Only the forms are different. It is changing the form. You understand what I'm saying? Guys, please, let's stop comparing slavery and colonialism and thinking who had it worse, who had it better, whatever you may think. I just think that we're both victims of harsh treatments, and we should stop weaponizing these issues to make a point, to make a claim, just because we want to get view on YouTube. Rather, we should be using these harsh treatments, these practices, to expose the evil intent that these global elites has always had to continue to enslave the world to an extent that they've already done. Okay, we should be claiming our freedom. We should be claiming our independence. African countries have received their independence, and yet they do not even have a central bank that belongs to them. where they do business among Africans using their local currencies. All currencies in Africa are either Europeans or Americans. We all use US dollars, we all use euro or pounds. Even the CFA, franc CFA, whatever, it is a colonial currency owned by France. I mean, the reserve is in Paris. That's why when you have activists like Kemi Seba and Nathalie Yamb from Cameroon, right? They know why they talk about these issues. These are the most firebrands Pan-Africanists who have been talking about these issues with energy and passion to make sure that African people, including African Americans, to break free from this chain, this colonial chains that have kept us mobilized. I mean, they have kept us immobilized. All right. So it's not the time to be comparing nothing. It's the time to come together, join hands. A lot of them, they will come down to the comment section down, talking about how, oh, Africans don't like us, African Americans don't like us, blah, blah, blah. Well, y'all just wasting the time, having stupid ass arguments rather than facing the real problem. The real problem is not African or African Americans. They're not the real problems. We both were mistreated by the same people. Those people are our common enemy. Instead of fighting among each other or fighting one another, why don't we join forces and go against the same people who have enslaved us? Because colonialism is just like another term, but technically it was a form of slavery happening there too. Don't you think? It's only called colonialism because they moved there to inflict the same treatments the African Americans underwent here in America or in other parts of the world. They only call this slavery because they took you from a place, they brought you here, and they made you a slave. While you were working your plantations and all of that, you weren't paid. They just fed you to keep you strong enough to go back the next day and do it all over again. Isn't that the same thing that they did during slavery? I know I'm not covering a lot of things. I didn't go in depth of, specific things that they did to us. But I am just basing on issues that impacted, like we all were a victim of. Okay? But if you have a separate opinion, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. And also, guys, do me a favor, hit the like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm to send it to multiple people out there. And I'll really appreciate you tuning in. And if you've handed me for the first time, my name is Merval. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm Congolese, born and raised, but I live in the United States of America. I've been living here for 12 plus years now. I do business in Congo, and I travel back and forth to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where I own a farm. And my ambition is to convince as many Africans as possible to go back home to invest. Because staying in the West, it's more beneficial to them than it is to us. That's why I've made a decision. All the taxes that they take from me, there's nothing I can do about that. It's the law. They take it out of your paycheck before even you have access to it. However, what I am capable to keep in my saving account, I'm using it to fix where I come from. That's why I don't complain as much about Congo. I understand there's room for improvement. We have a lot to work on because we all want a strong and prosperous Africa to attract more people to move back to Africa to invest. That's why a lot of people with, small amount of money like me are afraid to go back home to invest, but I ain't afraid. That's why I'm betting on it. I'm building, I am farming with the hope one day it'll work out so I don't have to stay here. Because when I'm thinking about all of this memories, and these memories are coming back to me, even though I didn't exist around those time where all those things were happening. But we have access to books now. We read book. We went to school. We understand what happened. It makes my heart want to explode. But there is really nothing I can do about that. Is there? Well, what I can do what I'm doing without having to be here. I can do it in a free land where I was born. Okay? And yes, that's what I'm doing. And I expect y'all to do the exact same thing. But I hope we get a conclusion. Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping for that conclusion as well. All right? I'm really, really hoping for it. But let's just stop all of this ish. They did better. They did worse. This is what they did, blah, blah, blah. I even listened to certain influencers where they compare the apartheid in South Africa to slavery. Oh, we have a lot of similarities. That's why, because moving to South Africa for African Americans will be a smooth transitions because they share the same history and they understand, we understand like where they're coming from. Stop that. Stop all of that bullshit. Okay? Stop all of that. It's just the way certain things had unfolded. Zimbabwe, they would have ended up like South Africa. Right? But they stood up. They made sure it didn't happen. They kept all the whites away from owning the lands to farm all of that other stuff. Zimbabwe now, they're victims of Western sanctions. But luckily, lately, I was watching the news. It looks like the sanctions against Zimbabwe have been lifted. It looks like it. But I'm going to go back and conduct a little more research on that before I'm 100% sure. But I am certain that that happened. So that is what they've wanted to do. Certain African countries are mistreated even till today. Starting from Congo, where I'm from, because we kicked out Belgians. We were like, all right, you've done enough. We don't want you to stay here, because if they had stayed, they would have been in control of the economy, even being the minority. Isn't that exactly what's happening in South Africa? So, especially African Americans who talk about this issue and they say like, oh, we are more like South Africa, and then it'll be more for us to the transition to South Africa. So you're basically telling me you're running from America because, white people control everything, white people this and that. So is the economy in South Africa. It's the whites that pretty much have the economic power over there. Don't you think? That's exactly what's happening there. And yes, I mean, they have power on multiple issues or whatever. That's why Julius Malema, one of the most beloved African Pan-African in Africa, who talk about these issues and said, if y'all elect me president, I'll make sure I take all the lands back, give it back to black South Africans. That's what Zimbabwe did. Guess what happened to them? They were sanctioned for numerous years. In South Africa, they have to figure out another way to do it, because if they just do it, and some of you that are thinking that going to South Africa, it's a smooth transition for African Americans, you may not like it so much if they do that. So you're running from America to go relive America in South Africa again, all over again. Because whites are, what is it? Is it 5%? I don't know if it's, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I don't know the percentage of whites, South Africans there, but that's a really like minority. It's very, very small number, but they in control of the economy. Just think about that for a second. All right. Rather than all these black dominated African countries who stood up, who said, no, we do not want colonialists staying here. Y'all can pack your stuff and get the hell out of here. All right. Okay, guys, I wish I had more to say. Maybe I should conduct more research and have a more organized discussion so we can talk about these issues in depth. All right. This was more impromptu sort of live stream. I didn't collect as much info as I should have to come out with this, but this been in the bottom of my heart for quite some times that I figured that it makes sense to talk about these issues rather than just holding it back. Okay, because the longer I wait, the longer it will take me to come out with the video. I got a job, I work. Sometimes I work all this overtime and I'm building in Congo. I don't always have time to have these conversations, all right? But I appreciate you tuning in. And for those of you that are existing members of the channel, existing subscribers, I've told you that there are videos on your way. Make sure to keep those alerts turned on. I have 2 videos I had finished editing last night. The one of them will be released Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Look out for it. I'm gonna keep you guys updated on what's going on the farm and how far we have gotten, because really soon we'll bring in the animals back on the farm. All right, so give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Until the next time, I'll see you guys soon. Have a fantastic